The eliminationism, or I guess I was trying to think about the singularity. Yeah, that's right, the singularity, and how that happens. How like you turn humans into just like feedback, like little plug and play devices, like pure appetite and satiation, like pure AB, like strip them of all identifying traits, like the kind of things that you get from having a life that is yours, a life that is the dream of communism. Instead, like pure mechanistic life that replicates the market structure and the market transaction networks, and that turns you just into a feeding machine, a feeding and producing machine. And then, like, if you're needed to feed, you feed. If you needed to work, you work. And it's at the behest of this algorithm, this totally alienated algorithm. I mean, it might have people who serve it and are better off than you. Like, there's still a hierarchy, and that's what keeps people in line. But they're still like serving this thing that's alienated from humanity. That's what the singularity is. And the singularity is when they're brought together, and humans become part of the machine. Like they become part of the binary code. Like human interactions are just part of the code. It's part of the fucking computer doing its computations. It literally becomes the hardware. It literally becomes the hardware. It's like the Matrix. That's it. And that's where we're going to go if we let them do this to us. Or, I mean, I guess it's more likely. It's just one more step down the road. Because you get this, and then you got climate apocalypse coming up. They're gonna. It's gonna be a thing about winnowing down populations and keeping the populations we do have require fully. God, what's the Foucault term? Disciplined, fully surveil. I don't know, like fully dominated, like just fully at every level surveilled, and your actions curtailed. What epoch does this era remind me most of? This is a good question. Oh. Well, one thing it would have to have is a crisis of leadership. I mean, and I know that sounds idealistic and non-Marxist, but I gotta tell you, man, there's something that is very end stage, just like as an identifying marker, not necessarily a cause. There's nothing that indicates an end stage power structure than its control by actual incompetence. Like that is where the flaws in the flaws that are sort of written into the code of something like monarchism or democracy or capitalist democracy or whatever, or Soviet communism, for example, or Chinese communism or whatever. Like the end stages of them all have in common that the leadership is genuinely decrepit. It has been rendered so by either literal inbreeding, like the old monarchs of Europe, or, in our case, a false meritocracy replicating itself, where you have this meritocratic class who engineer things so that just by coincidence, their next generation of meritocrats are, what's this? Their kids. What a coincidence. So they replicate essentially a literal blood aristocracy, but through this market mechanism and this justification that replaces like the divine right of the old aristocracy, because nobody believes in God anymore. So you can't say it's mine by right of God. They say it's mine by right of justice, because we've inculcated like Rawlsian justice as a social norm. Even though what they mean by justice, because they have these things that are technically available to all, and some people do rise up, but they replicate their own privilege, and their kids are, like the children of the most elite powerful everywhere, almost universally shitty, scummy pieces of fucking scum shit who don't understand anything about the world, who are psychotically self-obsessed, who are basically sociopaths, rendered so by their class position and like their absolute distance from anything resembling like real human life and suffering. And then they take over, and that is a byproduct of capitalism, specifically capitalism's democratic loss. How does capitalism deal with the fact that in order to maintain its legitimacy culturally, it has to have a democratic face, but also, if democracy was real, people could literally just vote themselves to communism, which was the theory of revisionist Marxism, and the like Bernstein and Kautsky, and it looked like it was working. And then a bunch of things were invented by the very, very capable and improvisatory capitalism. One being fascism, of course, a way to replicate mass politics on the right, and also circumscribing politics. And one way to circumscribe politics is to make it elite. And you make it elite by putting barriers up that are related to social standing that is hypothetically neutral, but in reality replicates a class privilege. It's a secular sanitation of aristocracy. That's what the meritocracy is. And so these people are just as much clueless dullards as the court of Louis Couture, or the Mad King George, or any of them. Ah, yes, yes, indeed. So anyway, that makes me think. What's one of them? It's got to be about a declining empire. That's the first and most important, fundamental feature. It has to be an actual empire, not a regular state. It has to be an empire, either formal or informal, that is collapsing. That doesn't mean that the state will necessarily collapse. After all, the British Empire, 100 years ago, was the most powerful force on Earth. It controlled something like a third of the world's population, and a huge chunk of its territory. That's where the sun literally never set on it, because there was part of it everywhere in the world. Their empire is gone, but their state still exists. They've latched onto us as little barnacles. Will we latch on to somebody else? Could we latch on to China and get a deal that, we lower the standard of living, but not all at once, and in contention with getting the ability to come over there. I don't know, or piggyback on your shit. I don't know, so that you can do more formal. You can do more. You can lay off some of the we would lay off some of that military might, all that defense spending. We'd lay some off on China in exchange for being able to do more domestic spending, which is what the declining European powers did with us after World War II. So anyway, so that's another thing. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the state will collapse, but the empire is at a terminal point. The economic collapse, that's usually a part of the decline of empires. The fucking plague is what's tripping me up, because we literally have a plague. That is a hell of a wild card. Obviously, the capitalism was very shaky right there going up, and this Corona thing kind of gave them an alibi for a collapse that was going to come. But I don't think even the most line go down hardcore believer would disagree that this is going to be worse than it would have been. Maybe you don't agree with that, but I really do think that this is going to make it much worse than it would have been if it had been a sort of natural outgrowth of a cyclical downturn. And now they got to plead it off on fucking the Rona. What's another one? Maybe we're Britain in the interwar period. And this is World War II. And maybe we are Britain in the interwar period, like I was talking about. Then in the war, 9/11 and the war on terror is the interwar period, and World War II. And then this is the collapse. This is the climax. This is the blow up. And then they never came back from it. But they also didn't go into turmoil. They got shattered. I honestly wonder if the thing that'll save us is our complacency and laziness as a people. Will we at the end of the day find it too much work to come to blows in the Civil War? Is that what will happen? At the end of the day, it'll just be oh man, really? Getting a militia together, going to the state line and doing expeditions to the nearby towns? Really? That sounds like a lot of work. If you do it, that'd be cool. I support you. I'll put the fucking thing on my bumper of my car. But man, that sounds like a fucking pain in my ass. Remember when 100,000 truckers were going to block every road going in and out of D.C. until O'Bumbler Crumbo was deposed and executed on the White House lawn? How many people showed up? I think it was BJ and the Bear. Get that reference, guys? BJ and the Bear. BJ and the Bear, folks. The other thing I was saying on the other stream that I hope I don't forget was about the possibility we have to do real automation of planning, economic planning. The idea that we could plan economic transactions with computing power to replace the price mechanism of capitalism. I really think we have the ability. I think that the strides forward we've seen from what the Soviets did in the 50s, Red Plenty by Francis Spooford is a great book about that. I recommend anyone. Very fun too, and very well written. In addition to being very interesting and educational. And to Chile and Allende, and how he tried to go against America's economic war that preceded the coup by creating a system for planning the economy, which was destroyed by the fucking asshole army when they did the coup. So that was in the 70s, man. And now we've got computers that has been pointed out a million times. We have the computing power in our pockets to go to the moon. I guarantee you that we have more. Your fucking pager probably has more computing power than all those banks of terminals that got machine gunned by Pinochet's goons in 1973. What can we do with that? And what are we already doing in terms of planning economies? Amazon, which is this a state within a state within a state, which has all the utterances of a state in terms of inputs and outputs and capital, physical plant. And that its internal decisions are not made by the market and price points. It's made by central planning, and it works. So if we were to just strip the bark of capitalism off the fucking thing, it could be an actual mechanism for fulfilling fucking human needs in a time of crisis. Can you imagine this a thing? No, you can't imagine it, because if we did it, then at the end of this, we would never let them take it away. That would be a red line for every human on Earth. That would be a thing that would never be allowed to happen. What is the end game? That's an interesting question. The end. I mean, I hate to be cliche, but it is socialism or barbarism, isn't it? It is a commonwealth of mankind that provides a stable basis for human flourishing, that will not eventually destroy itself, as all other systems will inevitably do. Or we will do what classes have done since time immemorial. Marx says it in the manifesto. The history of man is the history of class conflict. And that conflict is between either slaves and masters, or peasants and feudal lords, or whatever. And that when the conflict is won by one, which advances humanity, or both are destroyed. Common ruin of the contending classes, and that will be the outcome. The crisis of profit, the inability to provide for human needs, will create a savage return to barbarism, maybe a techno-barbarism, but one that never allows human life to flourish again, unless it fuses with technology, unless the singularity happens. That's the alternative. That's the real, like, if you really want to really put on your Nick Land, like, pineal gland hat, the choice really is, yes, a steady state human flourishing of capitalism, something that ends up like with the Kim Stanley Robinson series, like that kind of world, or the Matrix, basically, or we become one with the algorithm of capitalism. We become the biological mechanisms of it. That's our options. So we will be man or machine. Are we men or are we Devo? Like, there's a sick part of me that thinks the most likely outcome is that everything's kind of the same but shittier. Like, after this huge, this massive shift that, like, everything feels like the rails are calling off, everything is unprecedented, we're in a nightmare tunnel, we're in a literal nightmare tunnel, and we come out of the other end of it, and it's like, oh yeah, it's basically the same but kind of shittier. You know, more people don't have jobs, standards of living are going down a little bit more, people have even more debt, but things are basically the same. Only worse, which is what Felix has been talking about for the entire show's history. And I feel like he was right about Biden. We were all zipping and zapping and going up and down on the roller coaster with Bernie, and Felix was, we kind of almost tried to talk him out of it, but he was right the whole time. And he's also been saying the same thing about this. Even, I mean, maybe he would say differently now that we're in the middle of this, but I gotta say, if something feels right, something feels darkly, awfully right about, it'll be the same except slightly shittier. Because that big collapse, the destruction, it's like, even if you die in it, it will still feel like judgment. It will still feel like climax. It will still feel like something meant something. Like you witnessed something. You were part of something. You were part of the end of something. And you'll know that, even as you die. The worst is, no, I don't know, I'm not part of the end of anything. I'm the part of the middle of some gold bullshit that will go continuing on beyond my death into just this awful gray, steady state of steady decline into inhumanity. That's a bummer. That's a bummer. So honestly, yeah, like the more dramatic, more doomer scenarios are the ones that are actually more, in a narrative sense, happy endings, more satisfying. You know what I mean? Because if you're going to go down either way, whether in 30 years or maybe you're going to be the one drowning in your own fucking fluids because you had to work a Kroger shift so they wouldn't repossess your Kia. You're still going to be out. Would you rather be out in a blaze of idiot glory? Like, to live in a Bosch painting, to live in to see judgment, to hear a voice from the fucking depths of the depths of the depths of uncaring space, a single voice of judgment, to render meaning and shape to what has until now been a pointless, futile, painful, confusing existence, instead of just knowing that one of these days it's going to be like this, and one of these days you're just not going to wake up. Which would you rather have? And I gotta say, and that's what makes me think the reality is going to be, we get off the ride and it's, oh, everything's just kind of shittier. I have less money, I live in a worse place, I have worse health, more of my friends are dying of coronavirus. Until you're one of them, until you get claimed too. But slowly, through entropy, through just the exsanguination of the spirit into complete enemy and ennui. Or you go down with the fucking ship. You go down with the fucking ship. You get to go down into the depths of the ocean, lashed to the back of the great white whale himself. To the last I grapple with thee. From hell's heart I stab thee. For hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee. You get to have that. You get that moment. You know, you all know that was the happiest moment in Ahab's life, right? I think that, I'm assuming, am I wrong? If anyone else it's been a while since I've read Moby Dick. If there's any other English majors here who could contradict me, that's the happiest moment in Ahab's life, right? Is the moment before he is sucked into the bottom of the ocean. Because he's there, because he's on the whale. As opposed to just dying of scurvy while fucking dicking around in the middle of the Spanish Main. Oh boy. No thank you. No thank you, mister. Yeah, I think someone said that one of the reasons that everyone likes Doctor Strangelove so much is that how could you not love a movie with such a happy ending? Because that's the genius of Strangelove, is to render apocalypse erotically. Like the nukes at the end are orgasms. The beginning of the movie is the beginning of the intercourse. The first shots of the movie are footage of midair refueling of like the missile command like B-52s that like flew out perimeters of Russia with all their nukes. So it starts with the like literally the impregnation, then it ends with "Till we meet again, don't know God, till we meet again, some sunny day." Uh, Everyone going at once. I've talked about this before on the show, and I'll play the song again. I'll play the Tom Lehrer song, which is a similar thing. You want, and it's the beauty of the nuke one is it promised basically painless death. Like, oh, we'll die, but it'll be, you're going to be a fucking shadow on a wall probably, or you'll be dead within a few months. It's not going to be that bad, but you'll know everyone else is going too. So you've rendered your life has been rendered meaningful. Even with a slower decline, like if we come out of this in a real crisis, like the U.S. breaks up, I'm sorry, to know that you were there for the reign of the last president, that you know that whatever comes next is not going to be what was. You're the last American. It's like being somebody. It's like think about people. Like think about somebody who was there for the sack of Rome, you know, or like when the fucking Crusaders took Jerusalem. I mean, these are epochal moments. So yes, that's why I think, like, for your short term, especially if you have young people in your life, if you have kids or you have vulnerable people in your life, good. In the short term, good. But also, I think that's why it's most likely, because it's the most depressing, the most spiritually deadening possibility. So that's why I think it's the most likely to be true. So good news. Good news on that. But yeah, it's like I could say that now. It would be as horrible as anything I could imagine. Um, but you're gonna die anyway, you know?